Let's challenge your assumptions about what it means to be an introvert versus an extrovert.
Stay right here. Hey, welcome to Leaders with Leverage. I am glad that you made the choice to be here today because I am with one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. I'm not just saying that. Sherisse Hawkins. We have been business allies together. We are friends. We have shared hotel rooms. We'll just start out TMI, all of it right here. But so welcome, Sharice. I'm so glad to have you here.
I'm so glad to be here.
It's so fun. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you is because we're very different and we're really different in a lot of ways. And one of the ones that's so blatantly different about us is I am like on the extrovert to the max. In fact, when I got tested, I was all the way over on max. And you are just the opposite. In fact, you got tested too, and you were all the way over on the other end of the spectrum.
Yes, it was just like
right?
a blip on the very edge. Just a blip.
Me too. Me too. And what's so interesting to me about this concept is that in negotiations, they looked at sales leaders in the research and they looked at who are most successful. And at first blush, you might think extroverts, of course, are better salespeople. They are more gregarious and they build the relationships. But what they found were ambiverts were the most successful. And then introverts second and extroverts last.
Oh.
Isn't that interesting?
Okay.
Yeah. And it's about telling the story and making sure the other person feels understood.
I think that's the key right there. Feeling
Say
heard and
more.
understood. I've just been experimenting with that more in my own business, and the pausing and making sure that the person feels understood and repeating back just a little bit about what they said. As simple as that is, and as hard as that is sometimes, that little ninja trick has really, really changed the dynamics of the conversations I've had. And I'm talking in the last, I don't know, since the beginning of this year. So a relatively recent approach has paid big dividends.
And what's the evidence of that? How do you know it's been more successful for you?
The pace of the conversation and the pace of the engagement, it feels like you build that rapport faster, you get the trust factor faster, and then you can move to the next step. And even if that next step is no, you get to that place faster. And in business, time is everything.
As a natural introvert, I'm surprised that this has to be such a mindful practice for you, because I would think I was talking to myself to like slow down, ask questions, pause. But you've had to be more mindful of this. Is it just the opposite of that?
I think there's a little bit of an expectation. I don't know what the studies show, but I've heard that we live in a very extroverted society, and so there's this expectation, especially as a business leader, to be an extrovert. So it's like you're unlearning what you learned to try and be more what is expected, but it really wasn't the right. It's like you zigzag back and forth. So I think for many years I was posing as an extrovert.
So interesting, because you were an executive and led big teams and now a CEO. And so you had to kind of fake that.
Yeah.
To
And
be
it wasn't the right decision.
Wow. What would you do differently? Like, would you have shown up differently back then?
I want to say yes, because I do think that the more authentic you are, the more people can feel that, and the trust, and businesses around doing relationships with people that you know and you trust. We've both been in business for a long time, so I really don't know, if I'm being honest, if back then when there was so much pressure to be in this the studies hadn't been done yet, the book Quiet hadn't been written yet, all of that. I don't know if I would have had the opportunity to really lean into it. I think we've got more knowledge now, and it would be. So I'm just being honest. I'd like to say, yeah, sure, I would have done that, but I don't know if I really could have.
Yeah.
Swim upstream.
So interesting. I hadn't really thought about how much. I'll have to really think about that, because how much of me just being a natural extrovert allowed me to just show up and not have to fake that. Like, not as much energy for me as it was for you
So
back
much
in
energy.
the day. Yeah.
So much energy. Yeah.
So much energy. All right. So when we come back, we're gonna let's pull some stories about how being an extrovert for me, how being an introvert for you. What's an example of when in a negotiation or a difficult conversation you leaned into that or faked it, and what was the results for you? So stay here with me, Sharice, because we're going to be right back. It's me. Thought I'd tell you how excited I am about this collection of courses I have available. It's all around the concept of adopting a negotiator mindset. And the only way to do that is to really understand what it's like to be a negotiator so that you can practice it in your everyday. I'm excited about this project because it's going to allow people to do this on their own time and go through the course at their own pace. If you want to learn more, go to SusieTomanchuk.com. I'd love for you to check it out. Okay, so we're back, and I wanted you to tell a story, Sharice, and just to frame it for you and for the listeners, it's around high stakes, and high stakes doesn't mean it has to be an official negotiation. It's a situation that is meaningful to you, one that you really want to be thoughtful around having an outcome that is beneficial to you and the other side. So what comes to mind for you? Share with us an experience or a story.
That's a good question. Let me think a sec. Well, I think around just leadership and being a technical leader, the model can often be let's have a big team meeting and talk about it as a group and brainstorm. And, all those are great things. And they provide a lot of energy and a lot of creativity. Don't necessarily draw out the introverts in the group. And I found that in combination with that activity, maybe not as much, having one-on-ones, I had this approach where I would go, it's called Wednesday check-ins. And I would go around and talk to everybody on my team. And it was a lot of people, so it took all day long. And just spend some time with them one-on-one and ask a few questions, find out what was on their mind. And it allowed each person to take the time that needed. Sometimes it would be longer or shorter depending on what they were what they were dealing with. But everyone loved the ability to have that connection and to really be heard, like we talked about before. And then I'd take that back and put it together in the big master plan. And so our projects would come in on time, like because we
Yeah.
were really there was a lot of information being shared, both at the higher level of the group, but also those individual conversations that would allow everyone to feel heard, and even if they were introverts, they could have a voice. And I felt like that was a really powerful approach. And more importantly, the team said, please don't ever take away our Wednesday check-in time.
So was that in lieu of doing official one-on-ones that were set times, and were they,
Yes.
and so they were more organic though? You would
Yes.
just kind of see when somebody was available.
Mm-hmm.
How was that different than having it as a schedule? Now looking back, how do you think that played out?
Well, if somebody was busy or they were in the middle of something and I came by their office or, their work area, you can tell that. And so
Yeah.
you just go someplace else and then come back later. And some people are morning people. And like that organic and giving people the space to kind of talk when they needed to talk and not feel the pressure of talking in front of a lot of different individuals. And I must admit, I do think that in the technical realm, there are probably more introverts. So this might not have worked for an entire team of extroverts, thinking back on it, might not have been as effective.
Yeah, but I think there is something to, even in the art of negotiation, in having that relationship equity when everybody's at the table so that everybody feels like they have a place. I
Mm.
think you were setting that up so that everybody felt their presence all together because you had that connection with them. And then also, they probably had a little bit of insight about the project or something that they came to the table with when all of them were together that made them feel connected.
And you can also do things like say, that's a great idea. Why don't you mention it in
Yeah.
the project meeting? Or everyone wants to hear about that. Like you can encourage in a way that doesn't put them on the spot in the middle of a large setting, which can be very challenging for the younger staff, the more introverted
Mhm.
staff. So you can give them a little courage to
Yeah.
say stuff later. Yeah.
I mean, as an extrovert, I would probably leverage a similar approach because for me, people that are quiet and need time to think intimidate me.
Oh.
They signal a lot of confidence to me. And it's like I can't read their mind because, especially when people are so purposeful about the words they use and they say something and stop, that really throws me off because I can't pull in additional insight about them. So I like that idea of going around butterflying, if you will, and understanding kind of the way people think or what's on their mind, because then being there makes me feel like I can kind of understand where they're coming from.
I'm glad you shared that because I would have never, it would have never occurred to me that the space between the words or whatever can come off as intimidating. It just would have never, that's a brilliant insight. Learn something
It
today.
well, what's funny is I've learned to use that as my way of breaking through awkward silence, is that I'm illustrating that I'm not only listening, but I'm illustrating that I'm purposeful. It's very
Mm,
difficult for me to do.
that's really cool. Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I think about this, so that was a high stakes situation for you. These are a situation where it's really, really important to be purposeful. And we often don't think about that with meetings. We think that as leaders, we should just have this confidence to bring everybody together and we're just going to rally we all know the script that we follow. But you've just illustrated that this is all a work in progress and every team is different. What do you think about
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, I think the big team dynamics have a place. I'm not saying that they don't have a place, but that is kind of the balance isn't there between the thorough and thoughtfulness and the sort of the frenziness that can come
Hmm.
from one of those larger the loudest person in the room
Yeah.
is heard type of thing, and that doesn't come up. We always met our deadlines. Like people would like, how do you guys do that? But it was because we really had both levels, the
Yeah.
enthusiasm, the vision, the teamwork together, but also how every individual fit into the puzzle. And maybe we made our deadlines because we would know very quickly if something was not working and we could adjust. So I would always say it's better to get information and be able to have time to make
Yeah.
changes than to find out the last minute that there's something wrong. So that's probably more accurate than we always made our deadlines, is that we could keep them well understood and therefore deliver on those high stakes projects. And they were very high stakes projects, as you know.
Yeah. We're talking about software releases that go to an entire millions of people,
Right.
basically.
Right.
There, I just distilled it down. Impact to millions of
Yeah.
people. Uh, so it goes back to that research around, when I think about that research, the ambiverts are good at balancing the storytelling and understanding. I feel like your example is such a great illustration of that because your storytelling was in the Wednesday, whatever you called it,
Yeah.
connection.
Yes.
And the other side of it was you were understanding, you were telling them a little bit of both in that. And then you
Mm-hmm.
brought that to the bigger room.
Mm-hmm. And they're both, it's, you can't, just like what you said, you can't just be an introvert or an extrovert. The most powerful is when you can move between those
Yeah.
two different states.
And
Yeah.
recognize, yeah, that you are and have the power of, do I need to show up fully as me or do I need to show up as a hybrid of me
Mm-hmm.
so that the other person feels like they have their space as well?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Love it. All right. So you're going to have some tips for us. I'm just going to put you on the spot. So when we come back, we're going to hear Sharice's brilliant wisdom put together in 3 tips that you can start using today. So no pressure. We'll be right back. Hey, Susie here. Thought I'd pop in. I wanted to let you know I've been an executive coach for over a decade. I work with executives and they call me their silent partner because I help them increase their confidence when they're facing really difficult decisions. If you'd like to see if we're a good fit, head over to susietomandchuck.com and fill out an application. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, Sharice, you are on. So, what's your first tip when you think about how are you intentional when you think about yourself as an introvert to be successful in a high stakes situation?
You know this about me. I prepare.
Yeah.
I like the quiet time to think about what's going to happen, run through different scenarios. I love to do like public speaking, and I will write my entire script out. I won't read it, but I just like to be very prepared. And I think that's a advantage of I've read about introverts, is that they can run through things. They don't need another party to bounce things off of. They can actually prepare in like a nice quiet space. So have to be prepared. In fact, before this podcast, I was like, okay, tell me how I can prepare for
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's almost like a rehearsal. It's
Hmm.
giving your mind some ways to think through, what am I going to do so that nothing is a surprise.
Yeah. I think about like rock climbing, like you pick your path and
Yeah.
you might get off that path. You might have to do this hold in the moment. But if you have an idea of the journey, just a small plan, you have a lot higher chance of success. Ring that bell.
Yes, ring that bell. As you know, yeah, I've not ring that bell very often. I'm very awkward rock climbing. Um, as you know, prepare is a big thing in negotiation. And so
Mhm.
having that ability to rehearse, which you've taught me a lot as well, the power of that enables you to be clear headed in the moment. So it's so helpful because it does give you, it allows you to think through those those moves that you're going to do.
Mhm.
That was such a good analogy.
And people feel it. I think they feel when you're prepared versus when you're not prepared.
Oh, that's so important. It's like you care about the conversation.
Hmm.
Love it. All right, let's just keep going. What's your second
Okay.
tip?
I'm big into mindfulness and meditation. And so using a breath, using some silence to really be in the space with somebody else before you start, the discussion. And then you can notice like what is their pace? How quickly do they speak? And sort of matching a
Hmm.
little bit of their, I don't know what that word is. A little bit.
Mirroring, like mirroring.
Yeah, yeah. Just kind of get in sync.
Yeah.
And to me, that's through some silence and some noticing. Not a ton of time, but just being really calm and present for a beat or two.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what you're saying is once you go into the conversation,
Hmm.
making sure that you're not jumping in,
Hmm.
but being really thoughtful about slipping into the water. Don't jump into it. Don't
Yeah.
jump in the pool. Like just start at the shallow end and go in. That's such an introverted, like that's a great analogy for an introvert. Like I could see that where an extrovert just jumps into the deep end and just goes for it. I love that one. And so
And
then and mirroring is so
yeah,
important. Go ahead.
I think introverts and extroverts appreciate not necessarily having a splash all the time. Like, oh my gosh, you're going to cannonball, and we're going to
Yeah.
just a little bit of transition.
Yeah.
I think most humans appreciate.
Yeah. So
You can correct me if
finesse.
I'm wrong.
No, I think it's great. I agree. And taking breaths, I mean, that's really good for me too, because sometimes I get running too fast in the meeting and my pace is that can feel disrespectful to the other side.
Mm.
So I love your idea of taking a moment just to consciously say, what is their pace like? Let me try to match that.
Hmm.
That's really powerful.
You can
Love
get
it.
them to, if they're just trotting, you can get them to gallop. You can nudge them, but
Yeah.
if you're just pulling with all your might to get them to go faster, that can change the dynamic a lot.
We are introducing a lot of analogies here.
There's horses,
Rock
there's
climbing,
there's
swimming
there's
pools.
butterflies.
We got you covered. You stick right here. All right. What's your third one?
This is like a secret hack. I don't know if I want to tell it to you in public, but I will because we're such good friends. I like to take notes, and I have this wonderful digital tablet that I like to take notes on. I think you have the same one actually.
Yeah, I
But
do.
anyway, I let people know that for me, just jotting things down helps me, keep track, and it's not, I'm not being disrespectful. But that act of like looking down and writing is also a little moment where you can collect. They don't know what's
Mm,
going on in your head, but you can collect your thoughts, write some things down, not forget stuff. But it's like a little cognitive reset break in a way that doesn't feel as awkward as just sitting there in silence or running at the mouth of it. So I like
yeah.
the note, like changing your gaze and taking a couple notes.
I love that. And your secret hack of that is it allows you time to reset or think about what you're going to say next. And while you were saying that, I'm like, oh, that's how I slow myself down so
Mm.
that I'm not jumping into the next thing. So I'm giving their pause in case somebody wants to say something else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very intentional for me too. That's
Mm-hmm.
really, thanks for sharing your hack.
It's out.
It's
It's not a
out.
secret
It's
anymore.
out in the universe. Okay, so the three are to really be thoughtful and prepare before you
Yes.
go in. The second is to read the cadence of the other party and
Mm-hmm.
just take some breaths
Mm-hmm.
and mirror what they're doing. And then the third one is to take notes and tell them you're taking notes.
Yeah.
So that you can get yourself to catch up or think about what's next.
Right. And I think this is old school, but I think taking notes when you're typing is a completely different experience. You've got a barrier, you've got sound, but when you're actually taking notes like on a digital tablet or whatever, or writing, it doesn't feel as like there's a barrier between you and the other person.
You're still in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Love that. All right. You did good. Those are great tips. All right. When we come back, we're going to talk about what do you and I need to stop, start, or continue in relation to this conversation that will make us better tomorrow. We'll be right back. Hi, Susie here. One of the things that I love is I facilitate team conversations, whether it's talking about high stakes, how to advocate for one another. So if you're a leader and you want to bring your team together, you want to level them up, help them really bond together and increase their confidence as a whole, contact me. Go to SusieTomachuk.com, tell me a little bit about your team, and I'll be in touch. Okay, Sharice, this is where the rubber hits the road. No, is that right? Yeah. The pedal hits the metal. I always get this analogy wrong. I don't even know why I always say it. But as an executive coach, talking about concepts is great, but applying them is where the power is. So let's just go stop, start, and continue. Think about one of those in relation to our topic today. Pick stop, start, or continue. And I want the listeners to do the same thing. But tell us, which one are you going to pick and give us some color around it?
I had an epiphany today talking with you, and it was around what the other person's thinking when there's a period of silence. And you talked about, I assume that there's a lot of confidence there. So I'm going to stop assuming that silence, that people are thinking, oh, well, they don't know what to say next, but that there's an assumption around they're being very purposeful and contemplative, and that's a positive thing. So I'm going to stop that stereotypical introverted worry.
Oh, I'm like grinning from ear to ear because it's like that is such an important thing to consider. And it's so funny how we get in our own mind about what that means to the other person. And we don't even know. It might be illustrating something completely different. Okay, that's a good one. You made me really think about being more purposeful. I do write notes with my Remarkable as I'm going along, but I did it more because I want to remember. But I love the idea of allowing my brain to be kind of reset and giving me time to either change the pace or think about what I'm going to do next. So I think that was brilliant. That was a really great insight. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
All right. Well, I challenge everybody, think about what are you going to do differently as an introvert, as an extrovert, whatever that is, maybe as an ambivert. Like we've talked about, there's different strategies that actually Sharice and I both use that we take it from a different perspective. Don't you think, Sharice? What was your big takeaway?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, well, even things like just being able to be a little bit of a chameleon when you need to. Like, don't be so structured or think that you can't be an ambivert. It takes practice, but you can. It's like using your non-dominant side to do something.
I love that so much. We label ourselves. Yeah. And then we believe that we need to show up of what that stereotypical label means. So you're saying, don't do that. Stop it. Unlabel yourself today.
Try to let it go a little bit. Yeah.
I love it. All right, Sharice. So how can people find you, follow you, get to know you more?
LinkedIn is best. I'm the only Sharice, spelled Sherisse Hawkins, on LinkedIn. So I'm an original. So you can find me there.
Awesome. And we'll have that in the show notes too. If you're looking for Sharice, make sure that you connect with her, get to know her. I really appreciate you taking the time, Sharice, to talk about this topic, especially as an introvert. Not that I'm stereotyping you, but especially as an introvert.
Yeah.
I appreciate you showing up for me. Well, and we're both happy that you made the choice to share this time with us as well. We'd love to hear from you, whether you are more like me as an extrovert, more like Sharice as an introvert, or where you fall in that spectrum. Let us know what your strategies have been to show up as a better leader and in high stakes situation. And before we go, I just want to remind you, negotiation is more than a skill. It's a mindset. Thanks, Sharice. Until next time.